earned their degree in nutritional sciences, they will go on to do a 1,200-hour experiential program where they're not earning an additional degree, but they're getting professional practice experience. So that's a program that I spent time in that was more face-to-face, and otherwise I teach nutrition courses. And I think, you know, in terms of tips for students who are looking to translate skills from class into career and think about how to start leveraging their experience now, I always I'm thinking about this a lot too, just in terms of, okay, if I'm teaching a course or if I'm overseeing this experience, what are the things that the students are going to take away? And I think something that we can always look at are, what did we create and what did we do? What are those actionable things that we did in a course? And then start looking at how we can frame that in terms of an experience we might reference and kind of keep in our pocket for an interview, something that may need to be captured on the resume, and how do we start getting feedback? But I think the first cue for the student is like, what are the actions I did? And if you really went at each course systematically thinking like a treasure hunt, you know, what am I taking away that I can articulate and carry with me? And that can be also a conversation with a faculty member or with other peers. A lot of times our classes are, you know, equipping students with tangible things that might not be so obvious. So I think it's going and looking for and asking.
Thank you, Ashley. Professor Mars.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. Those are really good insights to build on. My name is Matt Mars. I'm an associate professor in agricultural leadership, technology, and innovation. I am primarily in the space around looking at how communities and systems change. And so I mostly focus on entrepreneurial leadership and innovation. I teach courses in areas of strategic communication, entrepreneurial leadership and applications, as well as innovation. You know, I did a degree at the U of A, my last degree, but I think, you know, where Ashley was mentioning earlier, her connection that she creates with students through her experience as an undergrad alum of the U of A. I actually turned to my background that brought me into higher education and that is constantly reminding me as to why I do what I do and what I care about. I'm a first generation college student, so I'm the only person in my family to have gone to college, and that continues to be the case today. Although I hope my sons are soon to change that. They're getting close. We'll see. But I grew up on a dairy farm, a very small dairy farm in New England. And that dairy farm proved not to be viable in the 1980s during a previous farming crisis, although I'm not sure that there's never not been a farming crisis in some way, shape, or form. And it was no longer viable, and it wasn't just our family farm, it was a number of family farms around our community. And that is an experience a trauma really, that myself and my family experienced. And I've carried that with me and have made it something that is part of my fabric, is helping to produce a community of leaders who can step into their fields, their professions, and indeed the communities in which they reside, and be powerful agents of change, to bring resiliency to communities, to bring resiliency to organizations, to not just only persist, but thrive and have impact. And so that's my passion. And I know it's a little bit late in the day, so I won't be too nerdy on you, but if you know really the root of the word passion, it comes from pain and suffering. Like that's what passion is, the root. And what passion really is something that you can't turn off, that is almost so ingrained and embodied in who you are that you can't help but pursue it. So when you think like the tortured artist that like just can't stop, that's passion. And I have that passion for trying to build those senses, that next wave of leaders who are going to bring resiliency to their communities and to their professions and to those they aim to serve. And so I want to help students find passion as well, because that's a really powerful thing. And it's really hard to go through, whether it's school, your career, or life in general, without really ever having found your passion. But you have to find your passion. It doesn't find you. So, and like where Ashley was talking about, you know, sometimes it can be hard to see why you're taking courses and how it's relevant. Well, the question is like, what is it that I can get out of this? And what does it tell me about who I am and what I care about? And it's really hard to do that if you don't know what it is that you care about and why it is that you're doing what you're doing. So I have a hard time talking with students about careers before talking to students about who they are and what they want to get out of their journey here and beyond. And so that's the meaningful connection. And the rest is like, no matter if you know that, whatever class you take, it's easy to see why it's relevant, because you're looking for anything and everything you can grab and hold on to make you as effective as possible. So that's kind of my philosophical view on that. And then sounds really very elementary, but learning should be fun as well. So I will say I'm very anxious to get back to the classroom, whatever that might be, so that, you know, to build that fun, vibrant, energetic classroom. That's another thing that I'm pretty committed to.
Thank you. I have a question not only for the panelists, but also for our two Career Center experts here with us today. How can students be best prepared for their virtual interviews? I know we can do mock interviews, and that happens on different campus centers, also all over main campus. But what is a great way or practice to be ready for that? Any of you would like to respond to that?
Sure, I'll start and then others can pitch in. So I think the best way to be prepared for any kind of interview, whether it's virtual or in person, is practice. You just have to practice. And you can practice by yourself, like recording yourself. You can practice with friends, you can practice with family, you can practice, you know, on online tools you can use, and frankly, you can use interviews with employers and for internships and for full-time positions, for scholarships. I mean, just take as much opportunity as you can to prepare and to practice. And the other thing I will say that I think a lot of times students don't do is do research ahead of time and prepare. So know about the organization that you're interviewing with. So if it's for a scholarship, know what the scholarship is about and who the scholarship is coming from. If it's an organization you're applying for an internship or a full-time position, know about the culture, right? Do some online research. There are so many different resources for you to be able to learn so much about companies these days. And you should do that because you'll have a better sense of the kinds of questions they may ask you, and you'll be able to ask them questions, which is really important. They want to know that you're interested, and you can show them that you're interested by being able to share with them some of the things that you know about the company and by some of the questions you're asking them about what's going on there. So those are my tips. Please feel free to add on.
I can go next, just a quick one. I think also it's really important to follow up after your interview. I think that we get so focused on the preparing and the execution of the interview. What does our background look like? Getting dressed, like also that's a big tip too. Like getting dressed for the part really makes you feel like it's a proper interview, even though it's online. Really getting into the role, but following up after, sending that email right after you're interviewing, making it personal, thanking them for their time, I think really sets candidates apart when going in through the interview process. And so I would just say, take something personal that you guys talked about, that you guys connected with, and then follow up with an email, sending them things, looking forward to hearing from you in a week or so, or whatever it is. Just follow up. It really does make a difference, and you stand out as a candidate versus maybe another candidate that takes 1 to 2 days to follow up after the interview. So I think that that's a really effective tip that you can take from interviewing in any capacity.
One thing, so those are all really great points. The one thing I was thinking that I always tell students is to prepare to think of a few scenarios that were really kind of dynamic, significant in their memory, and kind of put those in their pocket, because there's very often scenario-based questions that the common scenarios that I tell students to think about is a time when you were a leader of something, a time when you worked on a team and there was a challenge, and a time you overcame significant adversity. And then of course, if those can be even, more related to the particular area they're going into, great. But if not, either way, having some scenarios in their pocket so that any combination of those scenario-based questions, if there's these very critical things that have happened in your college career and your professional experience, they have something to draw on so that you're not kind of frozen as, someone asks you. Because I don't know, you never know what's gonna come at you in an interview, but I've been in enough interviews to know that I'm always, at this point, it seems like, gonna get a scenario-based question that asks me about one or all of those three things. A time you worked in a team and had a challenge, a time you had to be a leader, and a time you overcame adversity.
I think the only thing that I would add to a set of really great pieces of advice is, it probably will go back to what I was saying earlier, is know upfront why you're interested in that organization or that opportunity, and what is appealing to it about you and what you hope to gain out of the experience. Because I simply need a job or I have to gain experience is not compelling. And is the biggest asset that any organization has are the people. And it's every person is an investment. And so the clearer it is as to why you want to be part of that fabric and what you hope to get out of it and what you intend to bring to it, is really quite important and a really strong way to get the conversation started.
Thank you.
And just to follow up with, oh, sorry, Danielle, can I just follow up on what Matt said? I think that what's really key about that is when you're doing research about companies, it's really important to dive deep and find those companies that align with the things that you are looking for, right? What are their values? How do they treat their employees? What are the benefits and how do those align with what your values are for your life? And if you can find those alignments, if you can find those places, you're going to find a really great fit for you. And that's going to come through in the interview. And that's really key, because if you're going to a place where you're not enthusiastic about their culture or about the environment and the things that you've read about them, you're not going to do as well. And so take the time to do that, and don't be afraid of only picking those companies that align with you. I know it may be scary to think that way, but you're going to be more successful in the end by setting yourself up positively in that fashion.
Thank you. You each kind of hit on a different question I was going to bring up. So thank you for mentioning that about the follow-up or thank you correspondence, how important that is. That was a key question I get often from students. Another question I get from students is the cover letter really necessary, and why?
Yes. I actually just posted on the CALS LinkedIn. I think it was the CALS LinkedIn. It might have been our Instagram. I can't remember right now. But I just posted an article about, especially right now in this current job market, the cover letter can be the thing that takes you to the next step, to the next level. It seems oftentimes that cover letters, you might even hear employers say, well, cover letters don't matter to us anymore. Well, that's not really true. If you take the time to form a really sound cover letter and to really make the case for why you're a good fit and why you fit with the position, and you amplify your experience in that cover letter, they're going to take notice of it. Also, if it's really well written, that's huge points. I've read so many really, really bad cover letters where it demoted the application because they just didn't take the time to do it. If you write a very strong cover letter, that's huge extra points for you. And you should take the time, especially now in this current job market, to make yourself stand out. Oh, thanks, Valeria. She just posted the article that we shared the other day. So check it out if you're on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Bridget, could I hop on that real quick? And
Yeah.
I'm watching Kayla's expression right now because I know I spent some time with Kayla last fall at a communication course. And I would say is that with the cover letter, I think sometimes you put that off because they are really hard to write, because less is more, right, Kayla? Shake your head. Yes, Kayla, please. Yeah, okay. I'm going to say it. Mark Twain once said, I was going to write you a short letter, but I didn't have time, so I wrote you a long one instead. It's like really capturing who you are and how you fit into a small piece of real estate in a really compelling way is an intellectual challenge, but it's a fabulous skill set at the same time. So it's not just about this immediate job search. It's a great learning and professional development opportunity as well. So, and Kayla, it's so good to see you. I'm so excited to see you on here.
Thank you. You as well.
Yeah, I've missed you.
I have another question related to the questioning part of it in an interview. It's two parts. One is, what are a few really good questions someone can ask the employer? You know, they always open it up and say, okay, now do you have any questions for me? What is maybe one or two really good, strong questions that can be applicable to any interview? And then how can one answer that question? What are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? So what are ways that they, just creative things that students can be thinking about when those questions do arise, would be great from the panel and our Career Center experts.
I can start. I actually had that conversation today with the student, and what I told the student is, this is an opportunity for you to also interview the employer. Really, through your research, like, what questions do you have about the position, about the work life, about the environment that you might not necessarily find in those resources like Glassdoor or anything like that you're really intrigued to really learn about the position to make sure that it's the right position for you. And I always tell students, like, don't be afraid to ask those questions, like, go through the day of this person's, duties, or, whatever that question is, or whatever they're curious about. I would highly encourage them to ask, because if you leave the interview with doubts, I feel like that's not a really good sign. Or maybe, like, if you leave the interview with, saying, I don't know if, I was a good fit, or, whatever it is, it's important to kind of interview them as well and ask those questions that the person is curious to know about the position and about the work life, and a little bit about how Bridget mentioned, during that research, what are the missing dots that you might have questions on? Like, what is the missing piece? And really take that opportunity to ask, because it's important to ask. You want to make sure it's the right fit. And so I really encourage students not to shy away from that, and to maybe, run through the questions with somebody, with the Career Center, and get their feedback. But I feel like it's important to ask those questions that you might want to know.
I was thinking about, go ahead, Bridget.
No, go ahead, Ashley.
Oh, I was going to say, I was just thinking about, I think at different times, maybe Bridget, Matt, and made this comment about, like, knowing what your goals are, knowing what your values are, knowing what you're hoping to get out of that experience that you're pursuing, because then you can ask whether those opportunities are going to be available. And something that comes to my mind is students who are looking for experience in healthcare. And sometimes we just have to get into an environment and get the experience and do the job that's available. And, you're not going to be necessarily interviewing patients at bedside or doing what we really think of as that clinical work. But, say you're going into a healthcare environment and you're interviewing for maybe a food service job. This is a very common scenario for nutrition students. Asking, could you envision there being an opportunity for me to do X? Would it be possible that over time I could be, given the opportunity to work on this type of project or have patient interaction in this way? And, it's always important to make sure that you've communicated that you are interested in the things that the position has to offer, because there is the risk of, when that question comes across, sometimes people think, oh, they have the wrong idea about this position, or, oh, no, like that, you're not going to get to do that. So you have to just be mindful of the scenario and show, genuinely articulate how you are interested and how you do understand what the actual thing is that you're pursuing. But it's still also a good time to say, hey, I'm also really interested in building my skills in this area or getting interaction with patients in this way. Would there ever be an opportunity? And a lot of times I think that demonstrates that interest, that you want to take it a step further, and maybe you are willing to do that extra project if they can find a way to engage you. I especially think when they're working with students, I think there's a willingness when a student asks for an opportunity or an experience. I think employers are often like, could I give them that? I wouldn't normally assign this to a regular full-time staff member, but if this student really wants an opportunity, let's see if we can provide it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not uncommon.
Danielle, could I just hop in on, I have to say, I'll get this off my chest. I despise the tell me what your weakness question is. And what I despise even more is being on the other end where you hear the classic, I work too hard. Or, that's, I think somewhere deep back in time, somebody said, this will be a really profound question. And they intended it to ask it one time. And then somebody talked about it. Somebody else talked about it. And now everybody asks that question. And it's a really hard one to answer for any of us. But I would say be prepared for that one, because it's probably coming at some point. And I would dwell less on what the weakness is and more emphasize what you're doing about it and how you're showing an initiative. So, and don't say that you work too hard unless you're willing to be exploited, because that's basically what you're saying. And that's probably not, exploitation is probably not in your value system. I hope it's not. So instead, what you might say is, I have noticed that, like, I'll just use myself, for example, organization is not my strong point. But I've been working on it. And what I found is that if I can balance my organizational skills or lack thereof with my inclination toward creativity, I find that I can be much more productive and impactful. So I'm working on that, and I'm really mindful about it. It's just going past the weakness and saying what you're doing about it, because then you've shifted the narrative or the conversation toward illustrating your initiative, your thoughtfulness, your awareness of self. So but boy, I really hate that question. That's probably going to cause me to lose sleep tonight.
That's a great tip. I hope y'all were writing that down. He phrased it really well. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I've thought about it, Danielle. It's like, that question. Okay.
One side of the weakness question it made me think of is the Clifton Strengths. I know some people are familiar with the Clifton Strengths or Strengths Quest or Strengths Finder. It's all kind of the same thing with a different tag on it. But one of the ways that strengths is talked about is this idea of, and I think you can translate this outside of the strengths framework, is this idea of, like, if you have a characteristic that is really strong and that is a strength, you can operate with that in the basement or the balcony. And that really resonates with me because, sometimes the thing that makes us the greatest asset on a team or in a particular way is also can be our downfall. And I think that when we think about that, though, as something not being, all the way good or all the way bad, but it's just a very strong characteristic, we can talk about something about ourselves in a genuine way, as if, like, so for example, I have, in the strengths context, the strength of achiever. I'm very achievement oriented, trying to cross these things off the list, meet a goal. Well, that can be a positive thing if I'm, you know, pushing and working on a team and we're really moving, making progress. And it can be a negative thing if I have tunnel vision kind of, and I'm just so focused on the task at hand that I can't step back. And I think you could take that principle though. And so if you're talking about your weakness, it's like, what is the other side that they're getting with that from you? Like, they're not just, that's a part of you. And maybe it's got this, you know, maybe Matt is working on his organization, but, you know, the other side is that Matt is super creative and a really deep thinker. And so what they're going to get is someone who's not spending as much time organizing their stuff and maybe spending more time deep in thought, you know, coming up with those creative things.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. I needed
you're welcome.
validation.
Are there any questions from the audience before I roll through some more of my pocket questions? Okay. This is related to networking. So students who might have like a fear or, you know, they're just apprehensive to joining a group or a club or a conversation, even at some sort of event, or even in here in these Zoom type meetings or info sessions. What are some good tips or tricks that can help them overcome that to be better at that networking piece?
Show up. I was just going to say
that's what I was going to say, Ashley. Just do it.
Show up. Yeah. Just don't even think about it. Just, I mean, yeah, it's nice to be prepared, but I personally can relate to that feeling really awkward, especially as a student. I still remember it and I still get that. I'll just say it doesn't go away. I do a lot of things and I get some anxiety beforehand. I'm going to go meet people I don't know, even if I'm going to see people I do know. If I'm going out, I'll get that feeling. So I think it's normal. And for some of us, it happens more than others. But if you can get in the habit of just showing up, the conversations will happen. You will be in more scenarios where you're going to experience more dynamics and it will get easier and you'll develop skills. Now I know, even if I'm feeling anxious, I know that if I show up, I've got some practice and some skills. I know how to start a conversation and let it get going. And it's not that I feel great about it, but it's that I know that if I just show up and put myself out there, great things are going to come out of it.
Yeah, and I would
think
say
the other thing. All right, well, hold on, Valeria. So I would say the other thing too is that with all of the events that the CALS Career Center puts on, and this probably holds true for all of the other career centers on campus, no matter where you go, the employers who are coming there, the people who are coming there, they just want to help. At every single career fair, every single employer representative who is there, they just want to talk to students. That's it. They're not there to make judgments about you. They're not there to make it difficult for you. They're there to help you. Like, these folks love connecting with students. That's why they're doing this. And at all of the events that we hold, employers are just there to help you. So know that you're in a space in which people want to help you succeed. No one wants to see you fail. And so these are really safe spaces to challenge yourself and to try to get over any of those anxieties and fears that you might have about being in these situations, which is such a nice thing to know, because there's a safety net for you, right? We're all here to help you. We're all here to support you. And employers who engage in these kinds of activities as well, they feel the same way. So just know they're friendlies, and friendlies are good.
Yeah, oh, Blair, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just going to say, like, to start, one of the tips I would say is, like, maybe use the chat function and ask your question via chat, like the first couple of times. And then, you know, the fifth time, turn on that camera and stay on, you know, face to face, getting used to like being on these virtual calls. And then maybe your next question, you can be like, oh, I have a question, like on video, like ease yourself into it. I feel like there is a lot of pressure in Zoom calls. I feel like I even, like Ashley said, we still get anxious about asking questions. Just before this, I asked a question in one of the events that Matt had, and I was nervous asking that question because I was like, is this like a dumb question to ask? But I asked it anyway because I knew it was a safe space, and I knew that, you know, if I was, you know, if it was a dumb question, I feel like everybody would still be friendly to answer and try to, you know, communicate with me. And so I feel like ease into it, start with the chat function, turn on your camera, and then ask that question. I think that that's a really good tip on how to start networking and feeling comfortable.
I was, it was a great question you asked, Valeria, earlier.
Oh, thanks.
I would say, you know, that the other thing is that becoming comfortable being uncomfortable, that is a skill in and of itself. So if you have that sense of anxiety and you move forward anyway, that's a win, because you're building that capacity to be able to cope with being uncomfortable because you know it matters, right? Because if it didn't matter, you wouldn't feel that way. But my career development colleagues they're going to send bad looks at me when I say this. But I would also say, you know, be yourself. I think that, oh, good. I'm not getting, because I think that sometimes we talk about the etiquette, right? And certainly there is etiquette, right? But I don't know, I was saying earlier, I'm a first generation college student, and I know I spent a lot of time as an undergrad student just feeling and observing how I don't fit in or I don't belong. And when I finally got rid of that sense and just said, you know, I am who I am, and I'm going to put my very best foot forward, and I'm going to be who I am. And yes, I'm going to be polite. Yes, I'm going to be professional, but I'm also going to be true to myself. Then it got a lot easier. And I think people see authenticity more so than we give them credit for. And you might find that it just makes a much smoother, deeper, richer conversation. So be who you are, because you're pretty special, and let that shine through. So don't get caught up in all the rules. Rules are important, but not that important. Yeah.
Authenticity trumps polish every time, right? And with practice, you become more polished in your authenticness. So just be your authentic self. That's what everyone wants to see. And that is much more memorable than someone who comes in and is just spouting off a script that they've memorized or they've been given. Be your authentic self and let them see that.
Thank you again. Another question I have about is resume related. So what are, maybe from each of the four of you, one common error that you see over and over and over again? And I know maybe the career center.
Can I go first?
Yes.
Please edit your resume, and please have 50 different people review it for you, because the worst thing you can have are spelling and grammar mistakes. Do not allow that to happen. I mean, that's number one, is that. Just don't allow that to happen.
All right, we got her number one. Valeria, what about yours?
I think mine is, it really hurts me when I see a resume that is like highlighter green on the corners, and you know, it's super flashy, super in your face. It almost like screams at me like, hi, I'm Valeria, right? Or like, you know, it's just unnecessary. And unless you're like going into marketing designing or, you know, visual design or anything like that, I feel like going the simpler route is probably the best. So, you know, don't stay away from the templates, stay away from like those bold colors unless it is expected in the field that you're going into.
Yeah, those are my big things. And I think within that, like, even if not using a template that's really too designy, I even think, you know, just staying away from, like, sometimes I'll see these bullet points that have a lot going on. It's like a double layered diamond or like flowers. One time I actually got a resume. It was great in spirit, but it didn't work out in the execution. It had bullet points that were wildcat heads, and it was multiple wildcat heads. There was a lot of wildcat heads. And I totally, I could relate in the spirit of it, because that's how I feel when I go to U of A events. I'm just dripping in wildcat, but not a good look on a resume. So I think back to Matt's earlier point about the cover letter, less is more. And a resume needs to look clean, and the right information, the important stuff, needs to be what's catching people's eye.
Yeah. I would just say, Bridget, grammar, 100%. Grammar, editing, and then don't embellish your skill sets, because it's easily observed. Yeah. Happy-go-lucky is not a skill.
And I think that those templates really kind of lead students into that, Matt, where it kind of gives you like a scale. So like, sometimes I'll see like a template say organization skills, and then they'll give you a scale like, okay, that doesn't really tell me about like the experiences you've had that you really implemented that skill. And so that's why I kind of, just like Ashley said, like simpler the better. Grammar, it just makes the difference, I think.
What about using a photo? Because I know some students are like, my friend used one and I don't use one, but then I see we shouldn't, but then others, so it's mixed feelings. So what is the expert?
No.
Oh.
It's going to create bias. Mm-hmm. Now, do know there are some organizations that ask you to put a photo. It's very rare. Very, 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 very rare. But there will be some where they ask specifically for it. I also understand culturally in some countries, it's a very common practice to add photo to your resume or CV. But please know that in the US, that is not common practice, and you should not do that. So just no.
I just ask you the question, do you want to work for an organization that would hire you based on what you look like? So,
right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the fact is you don't know how that bias is going to play out, and it's not worth the risk.
Mm-hmm. Good. And the same would go like for putting your address, your mailing address on your resume. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you don't need to do that anymore. People don't need to know where you live, right? I mean, you can put the city and the state if you wish, but the most important thing for people to know is, how do they get in touch with you? So make sure you put the phone number that you actually answer. That's key. You need to answer that phone if you're going to list it. An email address that you actually check, that's also key. You have to check it. And then the other thing I'm telling students nowadays is add in your LinkedIn profile. Or for students who are doing online portfolios, or if they have, a website or something where they're showing activities or things that they've done, you can list that as well. But something where they can go and learn more about you that you are controlling, because they're Googling you and they're trying to find all of those things out about you. And believe it or not, a lot of folks think that computers are doing the Googling for them. And that's true in some cases, but in most organizations, it's a person who's sitting down and going online to try to find out about you. So if you give them direct access to the profile that you want them to see, that's much better for you than allowing them to go out and try to find it. So those are the three things I would say: your phone number, your email address, and then some sort of online profile. LinkedIn is fantastic, but if you have something else that is very professional and very much demonstrates your talents and skills, you can include that as well.
Thank you.
Can I just add one quick thing, Danielle, to that? Is pay attention to what your email is as well. And if, I always remember from years ago a student whose last name was Crank, and his email was crankshaft. And I just like, yeah, that's that's probably, you know, it's clever enough. I mean, it's an automotive part, whatever, but probably time to let that go and to use your U of A email or what have you that is professional. Yeah.
Hey, Danielle, we just got a really good question from Samantha. Can we talk about it?
Yeah.
All right. So she asked, how do we discuss pay with employers? And I think that's a really fantastic question. So I will give you my perspective on this, and then others, please feel free to chime in. If they ask you what your salary range is, make sure that you're being educated about what's going on. So if the job posting doesn't have a salary range, one of your questions to them should be, what is the salary range for this position? And how are you determining where people fall into this range? If there is already a salary range that's posted, then, and they ask you what your expectations are, make sure that you've done some research and you know kind of what the average salary is for someone starting at the level that you're hoping to start at. Okay, and you can give them that. But you also don't need to feel pressured to give that to them. You can say something like, the range that's posted fits my needs, or something like that. You don't have to be specific with them. You can leave yourself room to negotiate it. But if it's not posted, by all means, don't be afraid to ask that question. And it's hard. I know talking about money is really difficult. The other thing that's important to think about in terms of salary is, what are the benefits that are included with that? Okay, because those are huge. If there's retirement, if they're offering you, you know, to meet contributions that you're making to retirement, if they're offering you health care, if they're offering you paid time off, I mean, all of those things go into compensation. And that's really important for you. The other thing I would say is, when you're thinking about this, you should spend some time ahead of time thinking about those things that are important for you in terms of compensation. Like, what are your bottom line must-haves? And if it's not clear that those must-haves are part of compensation, ask those questions during the interview so that you know, if you are given an offer, where that falls for you in terms of your bottom line needs.
And some of the things, you know, besides pay, so thinking about benefits, other things that can kind of sweeten the deal are, you know, are they willing to allow you, well, now almost everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people are working remotely, but sometimes that can be a big thing, especially if you have a big commute. That can save you in gas. It can save you in lots of time back to your life if you can work remotely sometimes. Or having a flexible schedule, which is so important for people, especially students who are caretakers. If you have children or some other family who you're responsible for, that flexibility. So again, it goes back to what Bridget said. What do you need? What do you desire? What do you need? And then trying to get the most information so that you can be an effectively negotiate for yourself. And as you are feeling out the pay, also see, maybe they have tuition reimbursement. Maybe there's, they'll pay for grad school. So, but again, it just takes research, especially when you're new hitting the job market. Benefits is like a whole world of stuff. So it takes a little bit of looking into, what does the company even offer? What are the options that usually you can find that information if you're looking for it.
I think that also goes back to what what Bridget and Christopher were talking about in the chat room on the side is professional development and opportunities for growth, your own growth, and that's an investment, right? So that a company will put your way and into you. So that's not something to take lightly either. And as Christopher says in the chat, it's key.
Yeah, and I think also looking into the cost of living if you're relocating also is really important, because then you can then say, okay, well, this is the cost of living, this is how much I'm going to get paid, and then you can really then say, like, is this enough, or, you know, negotiate at that point. But I think a lot of students don't really think about cost of living, maybe because they lived in Tucson their entire life, and, you know, Tucson is very much affordable than other cities. So taking that into consideration when you're doing your research is also key.
Well, thank you. I have one other final question. I think if each of you could provide one major takeaway for the students that are joining us tonight as they prepare for different fairs or internship searches, what's one major takeaway point? Ashley, if you want to go first, or whoever. I just started there. You're at the top of my box here.
I mean, I guess if I just had to say one takeaway, it's invest some time in your resume. And especially if you're going to go to like a multi-employer environment where there, you know, you may not be able to completely tailor your resume for every person you're going to interact with. And so really putting that time in to get a nice, versatile, dynamic resume. It's like your little black dress of professional tools.
Oh, I can go next. I think my one takeaway would be reach out and get involved. If you need somebody to look at your resume, Bridget and I are here along with your advisors. Reach out. We're really here. We have a lot of availability. We're very accessible. And so if you've never had a resume review or a mock interview, like, we're here to help you. We're here for you. And we really hope that you come and be involved in our events this semester. And I think that being active constantly is really important as well.
My turn. I would say, I agree with all of that, but I would say know who you are, seek out your passion, and be authentic throughout the process.
So I would say, I don't know what level all of the students here with us are, or folks who may see this later, but start early. You know, starting the first time that you're on campus, you're, you know, freshman or grad student, whoever sees this, start early in the process. And, you know, don't be afraid to participate in things just because you don't think there are opportunities for you there. The more that you can go and participate in these activities, the more comfortable you're going to be with them, and the more that employers are going to remember you. So just a quick story. I had a student a few years ago, and the student was a freshman, and most companies don't bring freshmen in, right? In the summer between their freshman and sophomore year, they don't bring them in for internships. They're always looking, right? They're looking for retention. They want you to be an intern, and then they want to hire you full time because they've spent all summer training you. And so they're not often going to consider freshmen. And this student, you know, outstanding student, just a really wonderful student. And I encouraged them to attend this employer event. And so the student came and I introduced them, and, you know, the company representative said, wow, this is amazing, but we don't hire freshmen as interns. And I said, you would really be making a mistake if you didn't think about hiring this student as a summer intern. So they took it back to company HR, and HR said, no, we can't. This just isn't going to work for us. I think the student actually was kind of young and may have just barely been turning 18 over the summer, and they were a little afraid of some liability since they weren't going to be an adult when they started. However, the next summer, without even applying, the student was offered an internship at that company. And they remembered the student, and they stayed in touch with this student, and it was one of their top priorities to get this student in as an intern the next summer. So don't feel like you shouldn't, or you can't, or it's not appropriate for you to participate in events because you don't feel like you're at the level that they are looking for. There is always an opportunity for you. And the more you put yourself out there, the more employers are going to remember who you are. And that's really important for you, right? Networking starts really early. So don't be afraid to participate in it.
Thank you for those tips and your time today. And thank you to those students who took time to come in and join us here. I hope this information was helpful and you have at least one takeaway, but hopefully there's more. Are there any parting questions from anybody here joining us? All right.
Don't be shy.
I think that's it. Thank you, Chris, Matt, Valeria, Bridget, Ashley, for joining us and being part of this first Wayfinders in Session event. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everybody. It was very informative. I mean, I was taking notes myself. You can always pick up pointers. And so I think one thing that I would stress to all the students here is clearly the Career Center is there. It's a resource for you and they want to help you. And so if you have anything in terms of preparing for your future and job searches, that's the place to go. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye all.
Bye.
Just wanted to give an unmuted thank you. I took so many notes.
Oh, good. Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Glad to hear that.
Well, you guys all have a beautiful night. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Noah.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks. It was good seeing you, Danielle.
You too. Thank you.
Yes,
Bye.
thank you, Danielle, for doing such a wonderful job. And really everybody was just ready to dispense wisdom. And, you know, I hope that the students take advantage of what the Career Center has to offer, you know, because I think Matt was saying it, like, these are friendlies, like these are people that are on your side and are trying to help you. And I think sometimes when you're a student, you feel overwhelmed because you don't even know that, you know, and so hopefully they take advantage of this.
Yeah.
Definitely so. They can always find us on Handshake. So hopefully they're
Yeah.
all there.
Thank you for your info and the link and everything. Thank you both.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah,
Bye.
of course. It's great to see you both.
You
Well,
too.
thank you. And I think at one point in time we had 9 students in there, so
Yeah.
That's a great turnout.
I would say that's a pretty
No,
darn
I
good
think that's
turnout.
fantastic. Yeah, I think that's really great. Yeah.
So
Awesome.
thank you all, and just have a wonderful night.
You too.
And the rest of your
Yes, you
semester
too.
too.
Bye.
And Danielle, I'll keep
Hopefully
seeing you. So.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see each other again.
Oh yeah, we will.
Stay warm in Utah.
All right. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
true.
Looking forward to getting back to Tucson where it's a little warmer.
Are you driving or flying or?
No, we drove. Yeah. I mean, we literally just went from our house in Tucson to our house here. So it's like we're just doing the same thing, just in a different location. So it's,
We can do
you know,
that
it's
now.
kind of nice. Yep. Yep. Exactly. We can do that now. So it's kind of a nice thing to take advantage of.
All right. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, you guys. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.